Hey, what's up, everybody? So I want to show a clip from Colin Cowherd earlier this week when he gave his thoughts on this new Brock Purdy contract. And so I'm going to play this real quick, and then I'll give my thoughts.
So Brock Purdy got 265, 100 million guaranteed. He basically got 53 million a year, which is the area I worried about. Listen, I am willing to pay quarterbacks 50 to 55 million dollars a year that lead their teams or that are the offense, not that quarterbacks that comply with it. Lamar Jackson with a great organization and a great coach. He gets hurt, Baltimore can't score. Tom Brady with Belichick. He leaves, they fall off a cliff. Jimmy Garoppolo got this roster to the Super Bowl. So my take is I like quarterbacks who initiate advantage, not benefit mostly from it. And I'm not saying he's a smart kid that doesn't move well, but it's like movie directors and movie stars in Hollywood. Spielberg and Cruise are filling the theater. Many people benefit being in their movies, and some with a lot of talent. But again, Hollywood has a bit of a salary cap, like there are budgets for movies, and there are budgets for teams. So I think Brock Purdy tends to be closer in talent to a Baker Mayfield, 35 million a year, than Josh Allen, 55 million a year. And I'm not saying Brock is the only quarterback I think is overpaid. It does appear that Trevor Lawrence is overpaid. I said it at the time. I think Dak Prescott and Tua, I didn't like those contracts. I was right on both. But, the critics say, well, Justin Herbert hasn't won a playoff game either. But I think most people in the league know he can deal. So here.
All right, so Colin Cowherd does not like this. He said 53 million is an area he would worry about, and that he wants to pay QBs 50 to 55 million that lead their teams or that are the offense, not QBs that comply with it. So here's where I disagree with Colin Cowherd here. I think first off, Brock Purdy has been much better than most people give him credit for. I also think that because the 49ers had a really bad 2024 season, that's more so of what a lot of people are judging Brock Purdy off of. But I think to be fair to Brock Purdy and to really have a full picture of who he is as a quarterback, you can't just look at 2024. When you look at the past 3 seasons, if I would tell you that take away the team, take away who the quarterback is, if I told you a guy came into the league and in his first 3 seasons went to a Super Bowl and then went to an NFC championship, would you want that guy back in his in the next year? Would you want to sign him to a new deal? I think most people would say, well, of course, if they're getting to these big games, then you want to have the guy who led you there. And so I think for Brock Purdy, he's been very successful. Has Shanahan built at least in 2022 and 2023, has Shanahan built a really good scheme around Brock Purdy? No doubt. But I think sometimes quarterbacks who are in really good systems get punished, at least when it comes to perception of their play, because they play with good players. And so I think that for Brock Purdy, it's not fair to really use that against him. I think he's a very good quarterback. And if you look at his stats in his 3 years, 27 and 15 as a starter. And here's some stats from Nick Wagner: 4th in QBR, 3rd in pass yards, 1st in yards per attempt, and 7th in touchdowns. So that's why I think this is a very reasonable contract for Brock Purdy. And one thing that I think is important to note when looking at this deal, I think it's much more team-friendly than people are even giving, at least Colin Cowherd's, giving credit for here for Brock Purdy. Because when you look at this deal at $53 million per year, you also have to factor in the current salary cap. And every single year, the salary cap has been going up a ton. So getting $53 million in 2023 when the salary cap was about $50 million cheaper is much different than Brock Purdy getting $53 million when the salary cap has risen. And so right now, in 2025, the salary cap's $279,200,000. And if you look back to, let's say, 2022, $208 million. So the salary cap continues to rise at rapid rates. And so that's why I think it's important to look at this deal based on what percentage of the salary cap does this initial deal take up. And I'm not talking about the cap number for the year, but looking at the average value per year, the number there, which is $53 million for Brock, which would rank 7th, tied for 7th in the NFL. Looking at the other quarterbacks around him, what was the salary cap when they got their deals? And so what percentage did that average yearly number, which is just the total number there. What was the percentage of the cap that takes up? And I think that gives a better idea of how much teams are actually giving to quarterbacks. And I created a table here. I'll throw it up on the screen. And I have this ranked by AAV, which is average annual value as percentage of cap at time of signing. And so I went back and found the year these guys signed, the average value, the cap hit, or the salary cap of the league at the signing, and then the percentage it took up. And so when you rank it based off of that, Brock Purdy is 14th in the NFL. His contract at $53 million per year is taking up 18.98% of the salary cap, just on just looking at the cap for this year at $279,200,000. So that's a very reasonable deal for the 49ers. I think most people would say that Brock Purdy is at least, the 14th best quarterback. I would say lots of people would. And so that's where, even if he's getting paid as the 7th highest right now, you have to look at years past and how much the salary cap was when these other guys were getting deals. And this also shows you, how much of a team-friendly deal Josh Allen took, I think, just on a yearly basis there. And, you look at Joe Burrow, his signing took up 24.47%. Dak Prescott, 23.49%. Kyler Murray at 22.14%. And so even though he's at, $7 or so million less than Brock, at the time, the cap was nearly $70 million less. And so that's why I think this is a very, very good deal for the 49ers. And that's why I think, Colin Cowherd, I understand his assessment. I get that he wants to pay someone in the $50 million who's like a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson. But, Brock Purdy, I don't think he's that level of talent. But when you have a guy who's consistently winning, I think that you have to give him some credit and be willing to bring him back, because what's the 49ers' other option? Just moving on from Brock Purdy, hoping they land some, other worldly type talent just out of nowhere and are able to do that. That's not really a good option in my mind. And so I think if you're Brock, this was a very reasonable deal for him. He could have gotten much more money just based on his stats so far, based on what he's been able to do and accomplish in his first few seasons. And so I think he took a very team-friendly deal, and the 49ers have to be pretty happy here. And one of the biggest things about this Brock Purdy deal is the fact that the 49ers do have an ability to move on after 2 years if things go really south. I was looking into more of the contract broken down by Mike Florio, and he brought up one very interesting point. And so there's a fully guaranteed number. $55.05 million will be fully guaranteed if Brock Purdy is still on the roster on April 2nd, 2027, and that will be the full guarantee for 2028, which is $55 million. And so the 49ers, Florio said, can avoid that number by cutting him on or before April 1st, 2027. And so it looks like the 49ers are going to have Purdy, no doubt, for 2 years. But let's say in 2 years, it's going really south and they think they're better off finding someone else. They can move on and not have to pay that $55.05 full guarantee for 2028. If they move on or before April 1st, 2027. So that's after the 2025 and 2026 seasons. And if they do move on at that point, he'll only have a $35 million dead cap hit, which is pretty massive. But when you look at some quarterback contracts, some of these guys, some of their dead cap hits get up to massive amounts. And so that's pretty reasonable for the 49ers. And so I think that this is honestly good for both sides. If you're Brock Purdy, you're making a ton of money, and you definitely left more on the table. And I think it just sort of shows the kind of person that Brock Purdy is. And one quote from earlier in the year talking about the contract, he said he wanted to handle business right away and do it in a respectable manner and get back to my team as fast as I can to get going. And so he, didn't really miss any time. He was there. He's been there with the team, and this isn't something that's going to, move forward and be a distraction in any way. And I think that sort of just shows the kind of person, the kind of player Brock Purdy is, because I honestly think with his success, his track record, I think he could have argued for making $60 million per year just because of the salary cap increasing. So I think that would be too much in my opinion, but based on Dak getting 60 last year, I mean, Purdy's had much more playoff success than Dak Prescott. I would probably take Prescott most likely, but I think there's an argument that Purdy could be better than Dak Prescott, in my opinion, at least when it comes to playoff success. And so the fact that the cap went up nearly $25 million and the fact that he's making $7 less per year than Dak, I think it's a pretty good deal for the 49ers. So those are my thoughts. If you want more NFL content, 49ers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.